All right, everyone, going to be touching on the top prop bets for NFL on this Sunday. We got a 2-game slate. Let's go ahead and get into it. So first and foremost, we are getting some pretty good prop bets as it seems right now. We're going to go through the game by game process, team by team process though. So let's go ahead and start out with the first game that we have, and that's going to be the Chiefs versus the Ravens. Now we did just get news that Kadarius Toney is going to be out in this game for the Chiefs. No real shock there. We'll touch on the snaps for the Chiefs in just a second, but looking at the game, it's about a 4-point spread in favor of the Ravens winning. I think everyone would kind of agree with that. They currently look and kind of have looked like the best team thus far this season. That being said, the Chiefs continue to find ways to win. I would probably favor the Ravens to win here. That's just because to me, Chiefs haven't looked all too impressive. But injury-wise, like nothing too crazy for these teams in terms of what we haven't seen thus far. Isaiah Pacheco is really the biggest one, questionable with the toe injury. Everyone's expecting him to play. Something to monitor. I mean, maybe CEH gets a few more snaps, but I do think we're going to expect Isaiah Pacheco to get that full snap share. And so I do want to call out the snaps for the Chiefs to start here, and we'll start out with the Chiefs doing the game preview or team preview here. Looking at Pacheco, probably going to get around 70% of the snaps. That's no shock. Kelsey gained about 85% of the snaps. No shock there. The biggest thing that we need to kind of monitor is Noah Gray. How many snaps is he going to get in this game? Tough to say for sure. He has basically been around 50% the whole season with Travis Kelsey back. One of the bigger shocks was MVS getting a little bit more snaps to Justin Watson. Now, Justin Watson still played almost about 50% of the snaps. That is not a shock. And I bring that up because you guys will see Justin Watson over fantasy score is one of the better prop bets that we have on the board, which we'll see if that one holds up. And so looking at the board that we have right now, yeah, Justin Watson for over 3.5 for a fantasy score is popping up as one of the better ones. We are seeing McCole Hardman as well for over 8.5 receiving yards. That is a 4-yard difference between what the sportsbooks are thinking and what the data is telling us. Now, I do think it's worth looking at these few ones to start out with, but we're also going to see MVS for over fantasy scores being favored, McCole Hardman for over fantasy score is being favored for the over. So we need to look at kind of all three of those secondary receivers, secondary to both Travis Kelsey and also Rice. And so this does really feel like a guessing game as to which Kansas City Chiefs receiver is going to be the one that gets the snaps here. And so can they all get there? Sure, they definitely could. I mean, it takes MVS catching one deep pass like he did last game. Now, that is not something that I personally want to bet on too much. He did have 4 targets in that game, which was a little bit shocking to me. We haven't seen him typically get that many targets. So to me, that feels the most risky. But then again, Justin Watson over fantasy score is one that's popping up as well. We can see in that game, he only had 1 target as well. And then looking at Hardman as well. Hardman is someone that isn't playing that many snaps either. But again, the data likes all 3 of those to go for over fantasy scores. So the question is, can we trust that? And guys, it is a 2-game slate. I echoed this last week. I'm going to echo this again this week. Like, even though that these prop bets are popping up as good prop bets, and I don't think we should like doubt the data here. This is Vegas telling us what to do here. It is a smaller slate, and by pulling in obviously lines from sportsbooks, there is a higher volume going into these props. Thus, the public market can kind of adjust the props a little bit more. But what I'm looking at here, what I'm seeing here, is that the data is basically telling us, well, we have an okay stacking opportunity here. Justin Watson over fantasy score, MVS for over fantasy score, and then McCole Hardman for over fantasy score. That is pretty much saying that the Ravens are going to win. Now, personally, I don't think I'm going to go with any of those. I don't really like any of those. The prop bets that I might like a little bit more are going to be some of these ones. So we're seeing Rashid Rice for under 6 receptions. And we saw last game, he still had a good game. I don't think anyone would deny that he had a good game. 4 targets, 4 receptions, 47 receiving yards. That was great. The issue that we had with someone like Rice is the fact that Travis Kelsey went off. And so I would say that those two are going to correlate pretty well, that when Travis Kelsey is getting targeted that heavily, getting that many receiving yards, and also getting 2 TDs, obviously, I mean, it just makes sense that Rice is not going to have as good of a game. So I will say it definitely does not feel likely that he gets over 7 receptions. But with the projected game flow maybe being in favor of the Ravens winning, does feel a little bit too thin. But that, again, guys, it's a 2-game slate, 4 teams. Like, the prop bets, none of them are going to be great, right? The lines are going to be correct. We're not going to be banking on a 12-game slate where we have massive outliers. That is just the part of the season that we're in. And so that is not a terrible prop bet. I think this one has a great chance to be a push for Rice to get under or to him for him to get 6 receptions. Isaiah Pacheco, same thing at 3. The projection data really doesn't like this. And for the most part, it really just depends on game flow. Like if you think the Chiefs are going to be winning this game, then you probably don't want to bet Pacheco to get under 3 receptions. Or sorry, if you think the Chiefs are going to win this game, then you would want to bet Pacheco under receptions, because that would mean that he's going to be more involved via the running game. If they are playing from behind, then yeah, he probably will need to be involved in the passing game a little bit more. I will say this again though, like CEH, when he has gone on the field, has looked decent. And so if Pacheco is actually a little bit banged up, it wouldn't be surprising to see them go to CEH a little bit more. But again, not something we want to bank on. And then Patrick Mahomes and also Travis Kelce fantasy score. And then we'll see here, we got Rice fantasy score as well at 14.5. So to me, the nice thing about those prop bets is that I feel like they go hand in hand. If Patrick Mahomes has a good game, then I would say that increases the likelihood of Travis Kelce having a good game, and vice versa. So if you are someone that thinks the Chiefs are going to win, bet Mahomes over fantasy score, bet Travis Kelce over fantasy score. At the same time, it would suggest that we'd want to bet Rice for under fantasy score if Kelce is going to be going off. No, personally, with how good the Ravens have looked defensively and on offense, I really don't want to touch that many Chiefs props that we were getting. We did see a little bit of a stacking opportunity, some correlated bets. Mahomes over fantasy score, Kelce over fantasy score, Watson over fantasy score, MVS over fantasy score, potentially Hardman over fantasy score. Decent, I guess, correlated stacking opportunity there. I don't really like any of those prop bets too much. And so for the most part, I think I'm going to be staying away from the Chiefs. Now, I do just want to call it, this rush prop for Pacheco seems to be extremely low. It seems to be banking on the fact that Pacheco might be a little bit more banged up than maybe some of the reports are suggesting. Or it's just saying that Baltimore's going to be playing with the lead. I don't know. The offense has really kind of ran through Pacheco, and this one seems to me to be pretty darn low. I don't think Mahomes is going to rush the football as much. I don't think we're going to have as many like weird plays in this game as there was in the Buffalo game. And so for me, this might actually be the best prop bet. The worry would be that the Ravens really put it to the Chiefs, and then that over doesn't hit. The issue with that one is that Vegas doesn't like this. This would be a better bet to bet on a sportsbook, on FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM, PointsBet, something like that. But that really is the only edge I think that we have on this slate. So for the Chiefs, that is. So let's go ahead and jump on into Buffalo. And by Buffalo, I think I just said Buffalo. I mean the Bills. Or I mean the Baltimore Ravens. Apologies. But looking at it right now, I don't know how to feel about the Gus Edwards fantasy score prop. I don't like that one's popping up. Now, to determine whether or not that's a good prop, I think we should look at their snaps as well. And so looking at the snap counts that we're getting are not going to be a true indication of that game, I would say, but we did definitely see a higher snap share go to Justice Hill. That was clear and evident. And now I say, like, the snaps are not going to be the best indication because, well, Dalvin Cook got 13% of the snaps. All of his work pretty much came when the game was already over. So it's tough to say whether or not, if this game is close enough, if that would actually mean that Gus Edwards is going to be the player getting the work. Now, just how that game went, I personally think I would just much rather bet on Justice Hill to have a good game, but we did see Gus Edwards get 10 rushing attempts in that high scoring of a game. If he gets 10 rushing attempts again and maybe he falls into the end zone, he easily gets that over. And so I think that's what this line is kind of telling us, is that he could score touchdowns. Basically why the over's being favored here. Again, 4 games, guys. We're not going to get prop bets that we feel great about. And so if you think Gus Edwards has a good chance to score a touchdown, by all means, go for it. I don't know. I was really impressed with Justice Hill. That was one of the games where Justice Hill has a few of these each year, or a few carries each year, where it's like, why isn't this guy getting more work? That was kind of last week's game. 2 receptions, looked good there. Obviously 13 rushing attempts, 66 rush yards. He looked good doing that. And so to me, this almost feels like we're trying to predict what Baltimore is going to do at the running back position. And I think we don't know that. Like, I would love to say, yeah, we know Justice Hill is going to be the workhorse here, or, going to get 57% of the snaps again. I just don't think we know that. Like, honestly, if we see Dalvin Cook, who look better than Gus Edwards, if he gets more work, I don't think that'd be shocking either. And so for me, I mostly want to stay away from those receivers, those running backs. And if I had to choose one, I'd probably go with Justice Hill. And then looking at the receivers that we're getting, like Zay Flowers for under 11 for a fantasy score, really not the best there. But I will say, with Mark Andrews back this week, and that's something I should have mentioned. Mark Andrews is back this week, so Isaiah likely going to most likely fall back into kind of a reserve role. But I think with Mark Andrews back, that is going to hurt Zay Flowers. And if you're looking at his fantasy score prop, it does seem to be that they are really kind of banking on him scoring a touchdown. And so we know touchdowns are a little bit fluky, but he's not favored to score a touchdown, so I can get behind this one under 11 for a fantasy score. That being said, who's going to be productive then? Well, it could be Lamar Jackson, right? Just scoring a couple of rushing touchdowns. Nelson Aguilar had himself a very good game as well. Aguilar actually played more snaps than OBJ. Now, OBJ is not going to play a lot of snaps in a blowout, don't get me wrong. But like, I really don't think that was fluky that Nelson Aguilar was involved. 4 targets in that game, only 2 receptions, only 12 receiving yards. But we can see that was his lowest receiving yard total in 3 games. He has been involved in the offensive game plan. Like, that is nothing really new for Aguilar. He has been, quietly pretty good for them. And so maybe this game is high scoring. Maybe they need Aguilar to be on the field a little bit more. 14.5 receiving yards. I would be fine betting that over. Do I feel great about it? No. Would I much rather bet this? Receptions, 1.5 receptions, yes. Rashad Bateman under fantasy score, that's okay. We're starting to see that we're not getting that many big edges here. I will say Mark Andrews' receiving yard seems to be extremely low. That to me tells me that they think he's going to be banged up, not going to be playing his full allotment of snaps. Maybe Isaiah likely has a better game, but that really seems low for Mark Andrews. Justice Hill, this is the tough part. Given how good he looked yesterday or last week, and given how much they used him, like this would probably be my favorite prop bet. Maybe gets a little bit of work in the receiving game. If he can get 3 to 4, obviously points in the receiving game, that's huge. But man, it just feels like we shouldn't be touching that. And then maybe it's just Lamar Jackson. 22.5 fantasy score. We know he can get there via the ground game. His rush attempts prop is at 10.5. And so that kind of tells me that he's going to get a lot of rush yards. And like the rush data says, 65 there. Maybe adds in a touchdown there. And to me, that'd be my kind of favorite prop bet. If I had to choose one for Baltimore, again, it's a very thin slate. So now we're going to switch up and get into the next game. We got Detroit versus the Niners, 7.5 point spread or so, 52 for the over and under. So this is going to be a much more high scoring game on paper. You got Detroit, who I would say they got outplayed against the Rams, but it kind of seems like it's their year, right? Last week they handled it against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay wasn't that good of a team. And then last week, the Niners, they are pretty low. I mean, I'm a Packers fan. I'm a little biased, but man, they got outplayed by the Packers. And so it's kind of a weird matchup. Now, I think the reason why the Niners got outplayed is because Brock Purdy couldn't get his hand on the football as Rainey threw a lot of passes that probably should have been picked off. Will that happen again this week? Probably not. But that's kind of been the case with at least Detroit for sure. It's like the few plays here or there that need to go their way this far this season, they have. For the Niners, I think it was just more of an experience thing last week. What's interesting with Detroit is that they recently signed Zach Ertz. Is he going to play? Tough to say. We know that Raymond is still out for them. And so let's go ahead and start with looking at Detroit snaps from last week. And so looking at their snaps, I don't think anyone's really shocked at the snap. Jamison Williams, 70 and 58. He didn't have a good game. Now the data really liked him last week. I wouldn't say that was necessarily wrong with him. He got 4 targets. He just wasn't able to do that much with it. I mean, 35 receiving yards, 2 receptions, not terrible. But that was a bad pass defense. You would have expected him, if he had 58% of the snaps, to do a little bit better. It was actually Josh Reynolds scoring a touchdown, but he really didn't do too much there either. ASB was heavily involved. And one of the best prop bets that we have right now on paper is actually ASB for under 7.5 receptions. And I think I can get behind that just simply because last week they were going against Tampa Bay, who it's a funnel defense. You try to throw the football against them. No shock that he had a good game there. Going against the Niners now, where it should be a little bit harder for them to get the football to ASB. Probably looking at the under there. And then Sam Laporta. He continues to go off. The last couple of weeks, like Laporta for under fantasy score was popping up on Underdog. I'm like, I don't know if I like that. Like, he's been such a touchdown machine. And so we'll see kind of what prop bets are popping up for Detroit. And so I'm not touching these receiving yards ones. I don't really care for those. I'm actually going to take those off real quick. Rush yards, don't really care. So fantasy score, Jared Goff. Is Jared Goff going to score 2 passing touchdowns? Is basically what that is telling me. It's tough to say. Like, Jahmyr Gibbs has certainly looked good. I would say if they're going to win, you want to get him 9.5 rush attempts. I'd be fine kind of betting that. We do see ASB over fantasy scores or under fantasy scores somewhat being favored there. Probably would agree with that. I would say these two go hand in hand. Obviously, if Jared Goff is not having a good game, then Well, ASB probably not having a good game. Jameson Williams under fantasy score would also be one then that correlates. Man, Jared Goff pass completions at 23.5 does seem to be egregiously low. We know game script wise, David Montgomery should be more involved if they're playing with the lead, but we didn't exactly see that last week. And so again, when we're looking at the snaps, David Montgomery did lead the way. They were playing with the lead, but we still saw Jahmyr Gibbs get 36% of the snaps. So if you think that Detroit is truly 7-point dogs in this game, I would much rather target someone like Jahmyr Gibbs, who has to look like a very dynamic playmaker for them. And it's just, how do you go about using Jahmyr Gibbs? And I don't mind the rushing yards prop or the rush attempts prop. Maybe you like the receptions prop for him. This is pretty crazy, the discrepancy between Underdog and PrizePicks for fantasy score for David Montgomery. Now we have to change the calculation for Underdog, but Underdog likes David Montgomery a lot more than Price. So a slight, somewhat middling opportunity there. And then looking at it, like, I don't know, this kind of stands out to me. Sam Laporta, 5 receptions. Like, this has a good chance to be a push. We are seeing now that PrizePicks has finally dropped ASB to 7 receptions. Underdog still has that 7.5. So that'd probably be one I'm comfortable running out there. But again, guys, we are seeing that the lines we are getting this week are just tight. It makes sense. It's only 4 games. The lines are going to be better. So let's move on into the Niners. The nice thing about the Niners is, one, Debo is expected back. And so as long as he's healthy, we kind of know what this is going to happen with the offense. And so this is crazy. One of the better prop bets is going to be Christian McCaffrey for under fantasy score. Now, we saw this last week as well. And obviously he crushed that over, but that's because he had a bunch of touchdowns and he had that big play that, albeit, probably shouldn't have counted. Clock was at 0, but Packers got away. Aaron Rodgers got away with that a bunch out throughout his career. But yeah, this is one of those ones that you make, you don't feel good about. It's basically saying he's going to score 2 touchdowns if he does get the over. That's why the line is so high, but that's also why the average sportsbook line has it a little bit lower. George Kittle at 4.5 receptions, probably not one that I like too much. He kind of had a rough game as well. Again, you expect him to have a better game. Will Brock Purdy throw a INT? Obviously, he certainly tried to last week. We'll see if that happens. Like, I don't necessarily like any of the lines that we are getting here for the Niners. Like, I'm looking, Brandon Ayuk would make sense for him to have a good game in the passing game. That didn't happen last week. CMC to get 4.5 receptions in a game that's going to be this high scoring. That would be one I could get behind. And we're not getting that many Deebo Samuel props just yet, without him being officially good to go. Now, we're seeing that both Underdog and PrizePicks have his receptions prop set at 4, because at 3.5, heavily favored to get the over there. And if we look at it for Deebo, I think there's a good chance that he does get 4 receptions. Like, 2 of them are going to be at least by design there. If this game is going to be that high scoring, I think he has a great chance to get the over. You look at that game against Green Bay, it did seem like he was the game plan. It seemed like he was going to heavily be involved, and all the reports are suggesting that he's good to go. I would say this has a good chance to be a push. That's my issue, I guess, the most, is that all the prop bets that we're seeing that are good prop bets are ones that are being favored as a push. So before I get into the bet of the day, guys, I do just want to show you guys Underdog, and I'll show you guys my favorite bets for the 4-game slate. And so right now, a lot of the prop bets that are popping up for Underdog are going to be under fantasy score prop bet. I'm not saying I disagree with these. You saw last week where Jordan Love, that last pick, was the difference between him not cashing on PrizePicks, but because the line was so low on Underdog, he was able to still hit his over on Underdog for fantasy score. And so right now, where we're seeing some of these, where it's especially the quarterbacks, where Lamar Jackson under fantasy score is seemingly good because it's being overvalued compared to PrizePicks, especially. Pacheco, it's basically saying that he's just not going to score a touchdown, maybe not be involved in the passing game. I'm okay with that, but to me, if we are betting Lamar Jackson under fantasy score, we're probably doing the same thing for Zay Flowers. Kind of would make sense why Gus Edwards would then be favored for the over fantasy score, because if Lamar Jackson's not maybe scoring a rushing touchdown, probably going to be Gus Edwards. So I guess I can get behind that. But to me, looking at it, like, probably just going Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, and then Brock Purdy for under fantasy score and Underdog. So looking at it, guys, this would be kind of the best bet that you can run out there for Underdog as it sits right now. ASB for under 7.5 receptions. We're pairing these two together. I think that correlates pretty well. Again, you could run out Gus Edwards for over fantasy score as well. That's basically betting the same thing, where if Lamar Jackson's not going to get his over fantasy score, Gus Edwards probably going to have a rushing touchdown. And then Brock Purdy for under fantasy score. If you guys didn't want to add that in there, You don't have to. We are seeing a decent enough prop line difference between PrizePicks and Underdog, though, to run out something like that, where Underdog is the one that seems to be the outlier between the two props. Let's go ahead and get into PrizePicks. But first, if you guys are new to Underdog and you guys have never used that and you guys like that slip and you want to run it out, sign up using the promo code 9to5. That'll give you guys 100% match on deposit up to $100. So also just an easy way to help out the channel. That's going into the PrizePicks slip. So, and then looking at PrizePicks, guys, not as good. I just don't like the ones that I'm running out, to be honest with you guys, but that's the nature of a 4-game slate. You're not going to like, and honestly, if you probably do, probably just have too much confidence than you should. Lamar Jackson forward fantasy score, a little bit of a middling opportunity. We see there is a decent prop line difference, about 1.4 there. That's enough for me to kind of sway it. Rice for under 6 receptions. Again, this one probably has a chance, the best chance to be a push. I don't exactly love that idea. Same thing with Deebo Samuel, but again, I tend to agree that under 6 is probably the more likely outcome for Rice. Same thing for Samuel, where the more likely outcome is going to be at 4. If you guys don't want to use those because they have a chance to be a push, that is fine. This one, Nick Bolton, the average sportsbook line actually has it set at 9.5 and is slightly favoring the over for him to get over 9.5 tackles and assists. So at 9, that is seemingly a good one. Jahmyr Gibbs for over 3.5 receptions. If the game is a game that favors the Lions playing from behind, then I think that does increase the likelihood for Jahmyr Gibbs to get over 3.5 receptions. And then Nelson Aguilar, if he's going to be playing as much as he has, I don't mind that. Again, probably a little too thin there as well. That's the issue, is that all the seemingly good prop bets have gotten bumped, and it's just a tight board on PrizePicks. And actually might be just more of a DFS day. I think I will come out with an NFL DFS video, so be on the lookout for that if you guys are someone that's interested in that coverage. That's gonna be all for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to give a like and subscribe. Do appreciate that. Hit that notification bell as well. If you guys want access to the cheat sheets available at 9to5sports.com, well, head on over there. They're available for just $10 a month, including that's gonna be fantasy golf coverage, which starts shortly for probably a lot of you. Thanks for watching. Let's have a good slate, and as always, let's keep cash.